Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in today and clicking on this video. I'm out here with my buddy Larry here in Texas. He came down here to visit me and hang out and just being a good friend. And we thought of a really cool idea. We thought, well, I approached him. I said, I know that you're here on vacation and you're just wanting to hang out, but I feel like we need to do some kind of video while we're here, and that way you can kind of get out here and see what I work with in Texas and what the woods look like. So I asked him, I said, what if you do kind of a challenge video for yourself, not against each other, but you kind of challenge yourself because you've never been here and you're not really sure what the properties and the different plants and the names and stuff are here, but the characteristics of what can make fire go across the board.
Yep.
What we're gonna do today, or what Larry's gonna do today, is he's gonna create 3 fires from the landscape using his knife and ferro rod. And I asked him, I said, because you've never been here before, I just think it'd be really cool to show people that no matter where you are, or if it's in a new area or an area that you're not comfortable with or familiar with, you can still get your fires based on just properties that are across the board, no matter where you are. So he's gonna go over a little bit of what his mindset is and how he tackles this stuff, because he had to do this when he was on Vancouver Island. He had never been there before, and he knew it was, the environment was way different. So,
Right. Well, I'm always looking for, just like what JB said, I'm always looking for properties. And the properties for fire, for a ferro rod fire, I'm looking for like maybe some tree bark. I'm looking for surface area. Really dead stuff, of course, but stringy, fine tree bark, or tree bark that I can make very fine and fluff up. Or I'm looking for, I'm just looking around right now and I see some weeds that potentially have some fluff on them that could catch a spark. There's definitely dead grass. I can always go back to the fallback method of finding a piece of very dead wood and feather stick it and just get some nice good fine curls, and maybe do a fuzz stick with the back of my knife and just scrape some fuzz off, and that will catch a spark from a ferro rod. The properties are going to be the same no matter where you're at. There are exceptions once in a great while. On Vancouver Island there was this bush called salal, and it had a lot of dry twigs and stuff on it, but it seemed to be very fire retardant. So once in a great while there's some stuff that isn't going to work, but for the most part I'm looking for properties, and we'll walk around and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I'm just going to walk around and kind of show you some of the things that I'm looking at. We hiked out here a little bit and I did notice some things that I am familiar with, but one thing that I've got right here in this area that has the properties that I was talking about: a lot of surface area, fluffy, or something that I can make fluffy, of course very dead, dry. So I'm looking over here at this thing here, and this looks like it's got some fuzz. It doesn't have quite as much fuzz as I would like, but I think these weed tops here will help me. And sometimes you just have to take your time and just collect stuff, just go slow. Even though it doesn't look like I'm gathering a lot, every little bit helps. And you can't rush making a fire sometimes, especially in a new area. One thing I'm not going to do too is I'm not going to close my hand over the top of this and squish it down. My hands are a tiny bit sweaty, not too bad, but I don't want the moisture from my hands getting into this right here. So if I had a container or a bag, that would be the best. But what I can do is I can just throw it in my pocket here, and if it does have a little bit of moisture, my body heat will help dry this out. Now, putting it in my wool pocket here is probably not the best. I probably should have put it in my pants pocket, to be honest with you, because this is going to stick to the inside of my pocket. But that's okay, I'll just gather some extra stuff. So I'm just going to gather these little weed tops here and see how this treats me. Okay, so to be honest with you, it's pretty dry out here. So there are a lot of things out here I could probably be gathering that are easier than this, but I didn't want to go back on things that I know 100%. I mean, I've obviously used some of this grass and stuff before, but I didn't want to run to, there's a cedar tree pretty close by and there's cottonwoods around that we walked over. I just wanted to just grab what was closest and try that. So I went ahead and gathered some of these weed tops. I gathered the fluff to these now, which is going to be my catch for my spark, but it's a flash tinder, so it's going to only last really quick. And it's flash tinder is just exactly what it sounds like. It goes up in a flash and then it dies down real quick. So you need something to catch after the initial flash. So this grass, the same grass tops that I'm gathering, is going to be fine for after the initial flash. And the way I like to gather grass, you have to be kind of careful because it can cut your hands, but anything that comes off easy. So I'm just pulling like this, and I got these right here. If it doesn't come off super easy, I'm going to leave it. It's not dead enough. This isn't coming off super easy. If it breaks like that, then I know it's dead. A nice snap to it. You hear that? Snap. I only got this much from that. The rest of this, I mean, it'll light, and especially it'll light with a lighter. But if you want a quick ferro rod fire, in other words, you don't want to sit there and strike it, 15 times and waste your resource, then this is the way I gather grass. I can tell this stuff, I mean, it'll burn, but it's not the greatest. It didn't snap completely off. I can tell by the color of it, it's got a little bit of yellow in it. It's still not as dead as what I would like. This is what I'm looking for. Look at the difference in color. So what I'm doing now is I'm just prepping my grass. Basically it's a tinder bundle. Obviously I would need a lot more material if I wanted a sustained fire. All I want to do right now is get flame. What I've done is so what I was about to do was set this on the ground. I don't want to do that. This ground is actually a little bit damp. So while I'm explaining this, I'm going to put this flash tinder back in my pocket. If I was worried about the ground moisture with a sustained fire, I would lay a base down, but I think this will be okay for right now. But what I've done is I've just kind of gathered this grass together, and I've made a little bit of a platform for my fluff to sit inside of there. And then I can put this over the top, maybe thin it out a little bit, so when that flash tinder catches, it climbs up this grass, and then I can manipulate this tinder bundle one way or another if I need to. So I went ahead and put my fluff inside there. I'm going to get my ferro rod out now, and this is all JB's equipment. So JB, I'm going to die because I don't have the lanyard done right. That's supposed to be survival, and I'm dying. I can't get the ferro rod out.
You're going to freeze to death.
I'm going to freeze to death. Okay, so I've got a brand new ferro rod, or pretty close to brand new. Oh, I see you've scraped some of it off, but I need to get some of the oxidation off. I'm going to use the back of my knife. Got the Gen 6 here. This is JB's knife. There are a few methods of using your ferro rod, and one of them is the pullback method. And another method, which usually I like to have a base, is the plant and push. This is a sucky base, but I think it'll work. Now with this method, I can direct these sparks into my material quite easily. But if I have a huge tinder bundle with a lot of fluff, then sometimes it's easier to do the pullback method. There we go. To be honest with you, I don't care for that method too much because you see the sparks going everywhere. I've had them land on my hand. I actually had one land on my hand just now. So I don't care for that method as much. As a base here, and we'll see if I can get this to work. Kind of a rotten base. That's all it took. Wow. Now I can manipulate this tinder bundle around. I was able to direct that spark exactly where I wanted it. Whereas the plant and pull method, and it depends on your ferro rod too. If you have a soft ferro rod or a hard ferro rod, depends on how sharp the back of your knife blade is, or if you're using a striker, whatever. You just got to kind of get out and practice and see what works best for you. But for me, and especially in my area, I can take a little piece of birch bark like this and just do a little bit of fluffing up, and then I can just direct a tiny bit of spark. I mean, I didn't even spark it that good. And you know, for birch bark in my area, it goes right up. And this, I had a feeling, would go right up too with that fluff. All right, so now what I want to do is I just kind of want to walk around and just kind of see what kind of resources we have here. We just walked out here and Jonathan said, you know, is this a good spot? I said, sure, let's just do it here. So I haven't explored any of these woods or anything. I don't know what other kind of resources there are. So let's just take a walk and see what I can find. So if you're practicing back home, there's one thing that I did a lot when I was first learning my area is I would just carry a Bic. You know, I always carry a lighter. But if you grab something that you think might work, you can test it with a lighter and see if it's flammable. See if it is as flammable as what the properties are showing you that it would work. There are some things once in a great while, like I said, that seem to be a little bit fire retardant. And if you can just kind of remember those things and not utilize them by ruling them out with a lighter first, then you can save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of striking with a ferro rod. So right off the bat, I'm seeing this tree here. This has the properties of potentially having some stringy bark. Without destroying the tree too much, which this outer bark here, harvesting this outer bark is not going to hurt this tree. And I just go slow. You rush this stuff and you're not going to be happy with the end result if you really need a fire. I'm just going to go slow, pick some of this stuff off. Now, one thing I will say is that cedar bark is a very good coal extender. It works really good for a tinder bundle with flint and steel, or with a bow drill fire with a coal. But as far as taking a spark from a ferro rod, unless you mix it with, say, pine sap or something along those lines, an accelerant, it doesn't catch a spark as well as what you might think, from my experience anyway. So I'm just going to test and see if this will work for me. So if I'm grabbing it and trying to fluff it up and it does nothing but turn to powder, then I know it's not going to be that great. I can pick some of this outer stiffer bark out and separate the inner parts, like that inner part there. It's nice, and this is what we're talking about with properties. It's fluffy, it's got a lot of surface area that will help catch a spark, and it's not like this rough, or not rough, but harder outer bark. I mean, sure, this'll light once you have a flame, and of course you can add it to your fire or whatever, but for the initial spark, you just want this really fluffy stuff. So I'm going to take this bark and manipulate it. It's already got quite a bit of surface area, and there's a fine line between manipulating cedar bark to where it's fine and shredded like this, as opposed to getting it all powdery. Now, I'm going to use this base. We're doing everything on a very small scale. Obviously, I would like a bigger base. I would like a lot more tinder, but we'll just see if this takes a spark. And this was just happened to be something that I just couldn't pass up. I've obviously used cedar bark quite a bit. We had a lot of cedar bark in Vancouver Island, but we'll give it a shot here. And like I said, cedar bark by itself isn't the best spark catcher. If I had some pine sap, I could add to it. One thing I used on Vancouver Island was balsam fir sap. They have these raised blisters, and you can just poke your knife and it just oozes this sap out, and it's like gasoline basically. So once again, I'm gonna find the spot of the ferro rod that I scraped already, and I might even push this stuff up, because the one drawback with this push method is it will compress your tinder. So it's pretty easy there. See how controlled that spark was? So I'm going to head up to the top of this clearing here. A lot of times in the deep dark woods, the sun doesn't penetrate as well down to the ground as it would in an open area like this. So in an open area like this, the sun hits it, hits the material, dries it out, and also we're starting to come up to a little bit of a top of a hill, and the wind will help dry your stuff as well. In these open areas, I'm gonna have more weeds, I'm gonna have more grass, and right now, I just kind of wanted to show a technique that I've used before. I want to try to find like a thistle or some sort of pithy plant that's got a little bit of meat to it that I can do some work on it. Okay, I'm not exactly finding the weed that I wanted to practice on, but I can show the same technique with a piece of standing dead wood here. There's a lot of dead wood. We'll give it a try. I see this thing's just kind of laying here. This should be enough material for me to at least get initial flame. So I'm going to take this back to our little fire area. I can't seem to find any of the size weeds that I'm looking for, but that's okay. This will work. What I'm going to do here is see if I can get this piece of wood to work here. It seems maybe a little too rotten, but this is kind of a go-to method if I can't find anything else. Basically what I want to do, and I would have done the same thing with a weed top, I've done it before, but I'm going to try and make a fuzz stick out of this. Now, if you know, the wind's blowing, it's cold, whatever, you don't want to be losing all your material all over the place. Maybe I would set my schmog down, a bandana, maybe my hat, something to catch these fine particles. Right now it's not too windy and we're not dying, so if some of the stuff flows away in the wind, it's not that big a deal. So everybody knows a feather stick. The feather stick is, and this one I think is too dead or too rotten, but you're going to make some curls. It'll curl up a little bit. So you can do fine curls like this. But another technique you can do, we'll just set this down there, is do like a fuzz stick. And basically I'm just like the name implies, I'm going to try and make some fuzz out of it. Some woods work better than others. And what I'm doing here is finding the angles. It looks just like a flat spot there, but really there's little tiny angles. Right there is a flat spot. Right there is a flat spot, but then there's ridges on each side of those flat spots, and I'm shaving down those ridges. That's why I'm rotating either the knife, the position of the knife, or I'm going to rotate the stick. And you see all those fuzzes going down on the ground there. That's why I was saying if I needed this for real, I would have something under there. Leave this on this stick here, and hopefully I have enough here I can make this work. Okay, like I said, this should be enough for demonstration purposes, but you can see this is kind of a last resort. I mean, not really last resort, but it's certainly not something that every single time I want to fire am I going to make a fuzz stick. It just, depending on the wood, of course, but it just takes a lot of screwing around, a lot of time, a lot of effort. I mean, it's, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly a lot less effort if I can just collect grass or bark or something off the landscape as opposed to doing a fuzz stick or a feather stick like this. However, a feather stick or fuzz stick is really good if you're living in a wet environment. Let's see if this catches a spark. I've got my base here, maybe even put my knee to stabilize it. I'm going to put my ferro rod close. Now the same thing, just like I was talking about the angles on the stick and shaving that off, I'm on a very flat spot on my ferro rod, and that's why it's not sparking. So I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and now I've got some of the dust of the ferro rod or the shavings of the ferro rod in my fire there. Sometimes I'll even on purpose do that. Get some of these shavings into my tinder bundle here. Let's get that a little bit closer. Wow, I'm surprised that didn't go up.
There you go.
There we go. You saw all that popping and sparking and stuff. That really helped me out. Now, obviously, if I keep talking about this, but if I had a base under here, like maybe a bigger rock or a sheet of bark, I still have shavings of the ferro rod right here. See, there's a little piece of metal. There's a little piece of metal. And if I would have collected that all together, it would have just kept popping and helping me out.
All right, so I think you did really, really good. That was awesome. I kind of put him on the spot, just because I know how skilled he is. I knew that he was going to be able to do it, and I knew that he was going to definitely be able to find the resources that he was looking for. But I mean, even something as simple as a different ferro rod, a different hardness of a ferro rod, like that can throw a kink into it, or thinking that you might find this or that. And he did a really good job. A lot of that stuff is stuff that I've either done in my videos or that I do when I'm out here. So that's kind of cool that I didn't even have to tell you about any of that, and you just kind of knew the cedar, the grass tops. Like you said, we passed some super easy stuff on the way in, like the cottonwood or whatever. I've kind of got a few little spots in my head that I know there's cottonwood that I can go and use. But yeah, that was awesome, man.
Thanks.
So was there anything that you thought you were expecting that you might have been able to use or whatever that you didn't see out here? Or I mean, just
I would have thought there would have been, and we're in just kind of a pretty small area, but more weed tops that had more fluffy tops to them. I would have thought this grass would have been deader, more dead. When I was going through and gently pulling the stuff off, I thought a lot of this stuff was going to come off. These clumps of grass would work awesome with a lighter, but with a ferro rod, if you need your fire and you just got to slow down, take your time, and really just focus on the absolute deadest, driest stuff you can find. And sure, some of this other grass would have worked, but just taking your time and going through the motions of just really only collecting the absolute driest stuff, it's going to make things work a lot easier for you. These techniques I used on Vancouver Island. I used fuzz sticks, I used feather sticks. I would walk around and just kind of say, okay, I can see the property of this, I can see the property of that. I'm pretty sure this will work, I'm pretty sure that'll work. And for sure, after a couple of days, you know what works and what doesn't work. When you're dependent upon a fire for your water, your heat, cooking, whatever, if you're like making a fire a lot, you get to know your area pretty quick.
And at that point too, there's no screwing around of like, oh, I'm gonna play with this and see if this works. No, right. You know what works, that's what you use, because it's important.
That's right.
If you guys have not subscribed to his channel, if you have not ever seen any of his videos somehow, I don't know how you wouldn't, but he's got an excellent channel. I mean, comb through his videos, old videos of just really cool stuff, some really good primitive skills, some modern stuff, really great channel. Also too, if you haven't seen the Alone series on History Channel, I believe season 1, 2, 3, 4 are all available on their website to be able to watch them now. I think. If not, I know I've gotten a few episodes on iTunes. Really, really awesome TV show. Really cool seeing a buddy on there too. Really proud of him. So just wanted to kind of put him under the rug, I guess, and see what he would do. But we've had a lot of fun. We just wanted to kind of take a day to get out here, and I wanted him to see the woods and kind of show him around of where I come and go. But thanks for watching, everybody. Get outside, enjoy the woods, and go subscribe to this guy's channel.
Thanks.